Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions, episode 89. I'm Michelle Hawk, and I'm here with my shaman sister, Katherine Bird. Today, we're talking about pitfalls on the healing path. In essence, what can go wrong in your spiritual practice and also your own personal unfolding and awakening experiences, and what to do when, not if, things inevitably do go wrong. Because no sugarcoating this. Things will go wrong, but that's okay, and we've got your back. We're going to give you some amazing tools and awarenesses today. But before we get started, if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, Shaman Sister Sessions, go ahead and do that right now. And know that you can also access all of our previous episodes on iTunes and on Stitcher. This is episode 89, so we've got tons and tons of hours, like 90 plus hours, because some of our episodes go long, of free content for you on all sorts of amazing topics. So go ahead and find us there, and you can also find us online on Facebook, and go ahead and like our page. You can find my page and Kat's page as well, and you can like us on Instagram and follow us for more amazing content. But yeah, so there's a lot out there. There's a lot of ways to engage with us. But for our work today, we've both been in business for a long time. I've been in business for about 10 years. Kat, I think you similarly, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So between us, we've got about 20 years cumulative of business experience, and of course our own personal, many years of personal evolution and practice. And there have been a lot of things that haven't gone that well. And
once or twice, there's been something come up.
Right. So we've got a lot of stories, and we've got a lot of advice and some really powerful ideas and tools to share with you today.
Right. Because like Michelle said, it's not if, it's when. Stuff is going to happen. Stuff's going to come up. It's going to be your own personal stuff. It's going to be stuff with clients. It might be stuff with a practitioner or mentor or coach that you're working with. And it's going to happen. So what we want to do is to give you some tools and some support so that we're not shutting down in our experiences. We're coming from a higher level of integrity. Our last episode was on integrity. Check that one out. And we're able to thrive even in the tough spots, because especially if you're a healing practitioner, you will want to quit this job. You will want to figure out some other thing. I remember one time Michelle and I were like eating at like a Whole Foods or some kind of co-op or something. And there was this moment where it was like, do you think I could get a job here? And we sat and realized we're completely unhireable for pretty much almost anything. But
we're not employable at this point in our lives. It just wouldn't work. So we got to keep going.
Right. But you will want to quit. And there are lots of reasons why we will want to quit. Either going into our own healing process, whether you're starting to work with practitioners and you're having your awakening, you're going to want to if I could just turn back and not know or feel or be aware of any of this stuff, that would be great. Can't do it. Sorry. And if you do decide to become a healer, a coach, a therapist, something on the path, you will have times when you're like, wow, this is so much harder than I ever thought that it would be. And I have no idea what I'm doing. And is there any way that I could get out of this situation? Like, why when I found the purpose, and like, why is the purpose beating the shit out of me? Like, what is happening here?
Totally. I think I want to dispel something right now. I think this is one of my favorite things to dispel in terms of myths around our spiritual practice. And, it's the idea that once you find your bliss, or once you find your purpose or whatever, things are going to flow and be really easy.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Actually, expect the opposite. Expect as soon as you figure your shit out and you're like, yeah, like I got it. I went to the retreat and I did the journaling and I figured out who I am, and like expect at that moment, like this shit's gonna hit the fan, because what is happening is we are finding out about ourselves and we're coming into that higher alignment with who we are, that purpose, mission, higher self, true spiritual nature. And within that, everything needs to be burnt away and processed and looked at and acknowledged and felt. And that is uncomfortable and can create an enormous amount of change in your life. You might think, oh, well, I'm just going through this awakening, no big deal. Or I'm starting this path, I'm going to be a healer, no big deal. And then, wow, oh my gosh, like my relationship is imploding. I got fired from my job that I didn't think I was going to get fired on because I just realized that I'm a healer. And now I'm broke. Things start to happen and occur. It's like the universe is conspiring for you, but often in a way that can be destabilizing, confusing, and painful.
Right. And if we don't have the context for it, which many of us, while we're in it, we can't see all the pieces. And it's really usually, if we get that kind of clarity, it's only well after the fact. And we can look back on that experience and say, holy shit, I never would have chosen for that to unfold the way that it did. But I got all of this out of this experience. And I guess that was exactly what needed to happen. So as Kat said, we're going to be looking at, pitfalls on the healing path from a few different angles here, one of which, and the first of which, we're going to start with our own healing, our own awakening experiences, and then move toward things that can go wrong and pitfalls on the healing path of if we're starting to work with other practitioners, meaning like from the being a client perspective, because we all are clients, we all have mentors. And then thirdly, what can go wrong and pitfalls on the healing path from the practitioner perspective, because there's a whole lot of those too. And you can bet that Kat and I have plenty of stories from all three of those perspectives. So let's go ahead and jump in. Kat, I know you've got some stuff around your awakening journey and your healing journey, some pitfalls that you experienced, and then also some ways that you resolved them. You want to start us off with one of these examples?
Yeah, I mean, and I've talked about it before, and I think we've done an episode on spiritual awakening at some point, I'm sure. But my awakening was very intense, and I didn't have context. I didn't understand it. I didn't have tools. I didn't have awareness. A lot of stuff was happening to me, and I couldn't explain it. One of the things I didn't understand energy. I didn't understand the way that it worked. And I didn't understand I didn't even know that awakening, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that was like what I was like, I do not know what's going on with me. I think I've lost my mind. And, I had to take space. So I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to take a lot of space during that time. But, through that process, I quit everything that I had done before or known before. And I really spent an enormous amount of time alone, an enormous amount of time in my process. And sometimes that's what's required is, okay, I back it up. I got to completely be alone. And then I started finding mentors. And my first mentor was a master in energetics and physical embodiment, movement meditation practice. And that saved my life 100%. I don't know what I would be doing without that. And that foundation has given me the foundation for my entire practice, really. And my being able to handle myself and what was happening to me. So I would say those two things as far as like the awakening process. Number one, you need some space, need some alone time, need some nature. And number two, need some support. Oftentimes in context of mentorship, in study of physical, energetic, emotional stuff to help to process what's going on and what's coming up.
Absolutely. I want to call attention to another piece of what you shared that I think is really characteristic of one of these pitfalls in the healing and awakening experience is the idea of we become a completely different version of ourselves. And that means quite often, I mean, you mentioned earlier about like getting fired from your job or alienating people in your life, right? Like you lose people from your life because they no longer fit with this version of who you are. And I know that this is very, very common in this the healing and awakening process, where we stop spending time with people that we've known for our whole lives, and we no longer do the same activities, and maybe we now eat different foods, or we dress differently, or our bodies change as we come into health or transformation, and that can change very deeply kind of the manifestations of connection of how we're living our lives. So inviting that as well. You said you took a lot of space. You stepped away from everything that you'd been doing up until that point. I know, your community shifted a lot. Your relationships shifted a lot. I mean, the same's been true for me in so many ways. I'm such a shapeshifter. I've shapeshifted so many times where it's like not really being able to relate to the people who I was around by coming into the fullness of my practice. I started studying and practicing shamanism kind of near the end of high school. And then when I was about 16-ish, and then I started studying and practicing Reiki while I was in university. So when I was 19, and I was in the biology department, so surrounded by scientists and pre-med people. And me even just suggesting the idea of, oh, perhaps energy medicine might have a role to play in healing, I was laughed at, I was scoffed at, and people were telling me, you don't know what you're talking about. And it was very alienating. It was very, especially as I was relatively new in my practice at that point. I wasn't, exactly advertising like, oh, I'm studying shamanism. But knowing the relationship that I had with science and the relationship that I had cultivated with understanding the science of life and my appreciation for the science of biology, but also having this new awareness, this new study and practice that I was stepping into that was explaining to me a lot of the things that I felt intuitively and all the pieces that I saw missing from the scientific perspective, that unfortunately it felt very isolating. And I ended up not really being able to share that part of myself with that particular community. And I think that's very characteristic as well of a pitfall is you kind of lose people from your life, unfortunately, but not everyone is ready to do that. Or some people might come back later and say, wow, I had no idea what you were talking about then, but now I do. I'm sorry. Thank you. Or maybe not. That might never happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, for me, like a pitfall definitely was in not receiving more support and not getting more like context and awareness of what was going on. And now there's so much community. I mean, there was no like online community. This wasn't a thing. So now there is a lot of support and a lot of resource. I mean, you have this massive backlog of just this podcast, but how much information is out there, how much support is out there. And I think that's one of the big pitfalls is that we feel alone. And so then we reinforce this idea that we're alone. We reinforce that we're somehow being a victim of the experience that we're in. We feel like lost and alone, and then we keep reinforcing being lost and alone by only surrounding ourselves with people who can't understand us, and by not actively seeking out community from people who can relate, understand, mentor, support us.
Absolutely. And now I think there's less of an excuse for that than ever before by virtue of the internet. And, Kat, I've heard you say this many times before. There is a group for everything. No matter what your thing is, there is a group or other people out there who that's their thing too. So there's someone for everyone, truly. And I think one of the other pieces is this idea of being able to communicate what's happening. A pitfall is that we can, as we're trying to figure out the language, as we're trying to come to terms and understand, conceptualize what's going on. Even if we do have the people in our lives who love and support us, even if the people aren't going anywhere, they might not understand. And we might feel really frustrated and kind of fall in the trap of, oh, they don't understand me or they don't get it, when really it's, we're still learning the vocabulary. We're still learning how to talk about our experiences. We're still receiving context and learning about our experiences. And so to piggyback on what Kat was saying around the idea of, it's easy to kind of perpetuate of, oh, like no one understands me. I mean, that was one of my favorite things one of my favorite shadow beliefs for a long time is like, I'm so unique and special and nobody gets me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've, of course, I've worked on that a lot and cultivated my sense of community and belonging and my ability to clearly and effectively communicate what, when I started my path, seemed to me very intangible, very esoteric, very not very concrete concepts. So again, this idea of the more it lands in your body, the more it lands in your consciousness, the more tools and information that you have, the easier it will be for you to conceptualize it and thus connect and ground it into to your communication with others.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I also see that one of the pitfalls that we have on our path of awakening is that we kind of, I don't know, we like come out of the closet almost too soon. Like before we've actually integrated what's going on with us and before we really understand our gifts or our abilities or our energy or what, who we really are, we like kind of, it's sort of this interesting thing. And so I don't know exactly how to describe it exactly, but it's like, we were going through this awakening and all of a sudden maybe we feel like, oh, this is the thing and this is the thing and this is me. And so we get super, super excited and we want to talk about it with everybody and we want to share all the things and we want to like be the healer and the coach and the teacher and all of the things before we've actually done any of our own work, because awakening is not the thing, right? There's the awakening, which is like, oh my gosh, I have awareness and consciousness and we are all one and oh, this is so spiritual and I have the energetic, I can feel and I can see and I know things and oh my gosh, I'm like this multidimensional being. It's so incredible, it's so amazing, and I know that I'm meant to be a speaker, I'm meant to be a leader, I'm meant to be a healer, I'm so excited, I'm gonna get out there and do these things. But that is discounting the part that is coming, which is, oh, here's your shadows, here's your wounds, here's your childhood bullshit, here's the stuff from your mom and your dad, here's the stuff that you haven't taken care of around your physical health, here's all the stuff you're holding in your body, here's your past lives, here's like all of this stuff that we will have to process. And it is actually really easy to be in this space of, we talk about like spiritual bypassing, but this is one of the things where we're like, oh, I'm awakened, I'm going through my awakening, like I am light, I am love, and that's it. And then we don't want to integrate the reality of I am also all of these shadows. I am also all of this pain. I am also all of this stuff that needs to be looked at and worked through and dealt with. And, that's where really a lot of the gold is. Like, that's where you're going to learn your tools and techniques and modalities. That's where you're going to find your mentorship. That's where you're going to find the healers that you're going to work with. That's where you're going to discover about yourself at a deeper and deeper and deeper level and layer. And I see a lot of people who get stuck in that bright and shiny object syndrome where they're like, oh, I went and did ayahuasca and I got super excited and then I just kept doing ayahuasca, but I didn't actually really work on anything. I just opened my psychic centers. I blasted myself open. I became super open to seeing things and hearing things and knowing things, but I didn't actually become embodied, deal with my shit, learn how my energy system works, cultivated an energy in my lower centers. I've completely destabilized myself. And now, yeah, I see things, know things, hear things, but are they helpful?
And are you an effective human?
Right.
right? This is, yeah, I think this is a really, really huge pitfall, is getting stuck in the blissnany stage and the spiritual bypassing, where, looking at awakening is not the point. Awakening is not the end goal of this process. Awakening is the very beginning. And really kind of looking at, and I talk a lot about practical spirituality. I'm of the school that I call practical spirituality. Essentially, what is the point of your spiritual practice? And are these practices that you're doing actually helping you be a better human? Are these practices and these awarenesses and being able to see things and know things and channel energy through your body, how is it supporting your lived experience? How is it helping you live on earth? Because you live on earth right now. We don't come to earth in order to dissolve into the oneness of being. That doesn't happen on earth. We come to earth to have a lived embodied experience in a physical form, and engage with forgetting, engage with, the spiritual amnesia, engage with triggering, engage with really hard lessons, engage with transmutation of the shadow, engage with remembering our divinity, engage with compassion, even for people who totally screw us over, engage with our fear, engage with pain and trauma. Like, that's why we come to earth. And it doesn't mean that our earthly lives are going to necessarily be horrible and only full of trauma and pain. No, that's not what that means. It just means that if we're only, like Kat was talking about, being very unbalanced, if we blow our upper centers wide open and we don't have the energetic foundation necessary to actually land it in the physical embodied human sphere, then we're stopping at the very, very beginning point of the initiation cycle.
Mm-hmm.
In the awakening cycle. And so that's, again, a huge pitfall, because it's really tempting to stay in the, we are all one and everything is bliss and I am spirit. It's fun there. It feels really good there. And we don't have to worry about things like paying our bills and being kind to people and making a living. And we don't have to do that in that space. And yet, looking at, again, why are we here? Well, we're here in a body, we're on earth. What is it like to be all of that, be bliss and be our divine selves and be connected to the oneness of being while living in a human body? And how can I be more effective as a human by virtue of my connection to this divine part of myself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that we've done an episode on spiritual awakening and some of these other things, I think, at some point.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we have. If we haven't, then that's a misfire on our part. But
I think we have, and we got into a lot of different things and told a lot of stories and stuff like that. So check that one out for sure.
I think it's awakening.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Because I want to make sure that we're getting into some of this other, like, these other pieces around like what's going on in our practices and different things like that,
I guess before we do that, I want to very briefly touch upon, some of the very serious things that can go wrong in the awakening part. And we're just going to kind of like briefly put a finger on this. We both know people who have been institutionalized for different parts of their awakening experiences, meaning, their energies are so, and often what happens in this case is that there's blockages in the body, or there's blockages in the energy field, and the energy that's coming in to catalyze the awakening experience is so high vibration that it's, imagine trying to run a bolt of lightning through these little tiny wires. Like, you're going to fry the wires. Right? And that's kind of what happens, is there's too much energy. There's too much high vibration energy trying to move through a container that is blocked or otherwise not able to hold it. And so that's where seeking out mentorship from someone who actually knows what's happening is vitally important. Vitally important. If you're in that space where you don't know how to handle your awakening, or you're frying out your body, it is 100% your highest priority. Find help from somebody who knows what is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that can happen is that the awakening can come in and all of the sudden you're seeing things. and hearing things. So you're having what would be, and this can even be something that like, oh, I kind of had that when I was a kid and maybe it sort of went away and then all of a sudden here it is again, or so on, where there is all of a sudden a lot of weird shit's going down, right? And I know that for me, I had experiences in you know, hanging out in the bathtub, like screaming, literally screaming, being like, if anybody saw me with this, like they would institutionalize me. Absolutely. And unfortunately, some of our people have been in public when some of these things have gone down, or they were in families where it wasn't safe, or they already had some sort of issues that were going on. And were put in an institution because of the inability to be like, oh, I'm still in a body, I'm still a human, I'm still here on the earth. Oh, what, you know, it's because sometimes it takes, it's like so intense, and it takes some time to recalibrate, to come back to center, for things to become less intense. And exactly, that's where the healing, the mentorship, seeking support is really important. And you might think you're going crazy, and you might be seeing things, and you might hear things, and so on and so forth. And it is important to get the proper right support in those experiences, and to be really certain that it's not just, oh, this is my spiritual awakening, and so I'm just gonna like, you know, hang out and have my spiritual awakening, because there might be other shit going on, and you might need some real support. And some people take a lot of stuff to stabilize, through nutrition, through trauma release, through lots of stuff it can take to restabilize the system. So know that's the thing that happens.
Yeah, for sure.
And don't push your fucking awakening like, oh my gosh, I just really need to be doing all of these crazy practices. I just had it away, and I need to like medicine, awakening. Like I need to keep pushing it. Like I see this over and over again, and people completely burn out their systems. They totally destabilize because they think that that's the thing they should be focusing on.
And going as fast as possible. Yeah, stop it. No. And Kat, you have a video called like Don't Keep Opening.
Yeah, you can't keep opening. So go to my personal Katherine Bird YouTube site and check out You Can't Keep Opening, because that's really important. And I see a lot of people, especially in the medicine work communities, who are in this space. So
absolutely. Yeah, you don't need to push your awakening experience. It's going to happen. You're going to get all the lessons you need to get.
You're right on time.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't need to strive for it, and just let it happen. And I would say give yourself the gift of integration time. Give yourself the time and space that you need to actually let it settle, because that's when change takes place in the system.
And whatever you're doing to like activate yourself and like, oh, my third eye and all this, you also should be doing twice as much work getting in your body, dealing with your fucking trauma and your shit, and understanding yourself, being in nature, learning how to eat properly to support good nutrition for your system, learning how to breathe, learning good energy practices, learning stuff that relaxes, soothes your system.
That's probably a good ratio. Yeah, probably a good ratio to think about is like 2 to 3 times as much work on cultivating grounding and foundational lower chakra practices, lower center practices, as you would upper practices. So 2 to 3 times as much work in the body and in the grounding as you are in the psychic stuff.
Yeah, because from like, if you were looking at it from an energetic perspective, and in the Taoist perspective, we would be called a chi deviation, an energy deviation. Basically, the energy is in this center. When it hasn't been properly cultivated and overflowed from first the lower center in the belly, then up to the heart, has fully processed everything in the heart, which means going through all your emotions and processing all your emotional baggage and bullshit. And then it comes up into the third eye. So we are, a lot of us, activating all of this without any consideration into this other stuff. And you will just end up destabilized. You'll end up bringing through stupid bullshit that we don't really need. And but not really serving you being a healthy, grounded, stable, successful person.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to segue with that. So with that, pitfalls on the spiritual path of working with mentors and teachers, right? Because, so now you've had your awakening experience, or you're going through your awakening experience, you're seeking out help, you're seeking out training. What are some of the things that can go wrong as you're seeking out support? Because there's a lot of things there too.
Right. Because we just said probably at least 5 or 6 times, you need a fucking mentor, you need some support, get your shit together and go ask for somebody some help. And we absolutely believe that is true. And on occasion, that is not, it doesn't go well. Right. So it's just a thing. Go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, we've got a couple of episodes just within the last few. We did an episode on how to choose a shaman, how to choose a spiritual teacher. And within that, I invite you, go ahead and circle back there, because we talk about some of the pitfalls in that. One of the big ones is people get fooled into working with someone who might actually be a cult leader. Right? Again, we both know people who have had to escape from cults because they're looking for help, they're looking for support, and they end up in a super shady, really potentially dangerous, actually dangerous position. So being aware that that's a thing.
Right. Being aware that, we all have issues. We all have our childhood stuff and our wounds. We all want to be loved. We all want to be accepted. We all want to feel peace and joy, etc. And that it's not that hard for some people to exploit that, to be able to cultivate, right? They're cultivating their energy to the place where being near them, you feel better. You feel more calm, more peace, more joy, more whatever that is. Maybe they're giving you practices that you feel are really powerful and they're great and they're working. And then when you get closer and closer, that person really is operating from a more ego, orientation, and they're not actually going to be a great mentor for you to, they might be a really great mentor for you to figure out, like, oh, I don't actually love myself and I give away all my power and I don't have any boundaries and I really want someone to love and accept me and I want someone to fix me and I want all these things. And that might be a really important, very painful lesson for you to learn. But if you go into the experiences with a higher level of consciousness of being aware of, is this triggering in me that I'm trying to get this person to fix me and I don't really actually love myself and I don't have boundaries, like all of those things, like it's to have that awareness around those things so that you don't fall into the trap, so that you don't accidentally give away all your power to somebody else because they're so powerful.
Right.
Power is a very interesting thing where you have power, you cultivate power, and then you understand that you can actually siphon power off of other people. And unfortunately, this is a dynamic that occurs in spiritual communities and with spiritual teachers because it becomes something that happens. So.
Right. Absolutely. And the world is full of examples of this, even not in spiritual communities, just looking at charismatic, dynamic people who end up attracting a lot of attention and attracting a lot of force that then they're using in harmful ways. Right. Yeah. So we have some really beautiful / horrifying examples of that happening right now in this very moment. So kind of just invitation to pay attention there. I would say also just taking the cult facet out of the equation, but one of the pitfalls of kind of this point in choosing a spiritual mentor or working with somebody is either picking someone based on not having all the information or picking choosing someone to work with who is actually not a very good fit for you. And again, this doesn't have to necessarily mean that they're, they're harmful or they're deliberately out to get you in any way. But again, we have, and I really recommend tuning back into those episodes, because we talk about there's a whole lot of people on this path who might have had their own awakening yesterday. And they, and in our integrity episode, our last episode, we talked about, people who, Kat brought up kind of the Reiki phenomenon that has really exploded. And okay, people are getting their training and immediately turning around to offer healing work and offer initiations. And also, like, if these people, and this is super common, I'm not throwing shade at these people, but I'm just saying, like, hey, this is the thing. People who might be coming from a corporate or a design or a marketing background, so they're really good at making themselves look awesome and sell the thing, but they don't actually have the years of training and experience and process, so they haven't done their own work, but they're really good at selling themselves. So then you end up working with someone who's in their own shit or can't actually support you in the way that you really need. And again, it's not necessarily that they're trying to deliberately harm you, but it is really, really important to not fall in the pitfall of marketing when it comes to choosing someone to work with as a spiritual teacher, as a healer. And being, again, Kat was talking about that, that awareness and that, okay, what's happening in my field? What do I need in my field? And I would say, interviewing your practitioner is really finding someone who is aligned and who you feel you can trust and be safe with and be very open with in a very an intimate relationship, because working with a healer is a very intimate process. So there's a lot of consideration that goes into that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say another place is that we have shiny object syndrome. And so we're like, oh, I want to try this thing, and I want to do this person and this person and this person and this person. And we never actually give ourselves time, our system time, to meet really the healer, practitioner, mentor that we're working with, to discover their modality or the lineage or the training or whatever it is, to incorporate it, to integrate it, to go through their system, their process. A lot of times people will be like, well, yeah, I tried that. I did one session with this, I did one session of that, I did 2 sessions of this, and I don't know why I've been working so long, why I'm not better about this. And it's like, well, because there's a process you're going through, and it takes a while. It takes a while for the person to get to know you. It takes a while for you to get to know the person. It takes a while for you to trust each other completely. It takes a while for the work to unfold and unravel, and you to receive and to open and to go through your process. But a lot of times we have this like, oh, well, you should just fix me, and I should just go to this person, and then I should be better, and I should know all my shit together because I did this session. It's like,
Right. Yeah, it's, really indicative of, again, we live in a world where everything is pretty much instantaneously available. And yet that doesn't apply when it comes to our integration process and our awakening experiences and coming into the fullness of mastery and self-actualization. I mean, again, this is a lifelong and many lives long process here. So bringing that same expectation with, okay, if I want to, if I want to learn a thing, I'm going to Google it. If I want to take a class, I can find a class, within the next week on this thing that I want to take. And I think bringing that expectation of immediacy to this practice is, it's ultimately not in your best interest. It's not in, and I will also say from the practitioner perspective, and I guess this is jumping ahead a little bit, but, we get people who want immediate changes and immediate results. We get people who are impatient. I myself have been impatient in my own process. I want, why can't I just be done processing this already? Why can't I just have learned and mastered this thing already? And it's really easy to get into that space of impatience because we want the result. We want the when I have processed this thing, I will be, do, or have whatever it is. And yet the work is the work is the goal, right? The work, the process, having the patience with it, letting it settle. That is really where, again, you're getting the gold out of this experience. I like to use the metaphor of like a bucket of kind of muddy water or silty water. So imagine you have your bucket and there's all this silt at the bottom, and that's all your traumas and your shadows and your crap, basically. And you have an awakening experience. It's like shaking the bucket, and all of a sudden the water's all muddy and you can't see anything. And you know, okay, I have to get the mud out in order to have clear water. I have to like scoop out the mud. So you're like scooping. And every time you scoop, like you might be getting a little bit of mud out, but you're just stirring everything up and it stays really cloudy. You need to just set it down and let it settle, right? Because that's actually how you have integration, how you have clarity. It comes from stillness and comes from space, not from doing. When we grow, the growth comes as a result of integration. If we're constantly doing, then there's no new evolution. It's just the work part.
Right. And to give yourself time with something, you know, and I know that I've been guilty of this too, and being like, oh my gosh, I have this thing. Oh, I have this realization that, oh, wow, I just have to work on this thing. And then I like call like 4 different practitioners and I'm like, okay, I need to see this person about the thing because they're going to give me like this reading about it. And then I need to go see this somatic person, and then you go to see this, you know, shamanic person, I need to go see this energy person. It's just like, then it just becomes this big mess. And I'm like, what's working? What's not working? What's helping me? I'm exhausted. I'm tired of my story. Like, I'm not tired. Like, you know, that's something that we can do, right? We're like, I'm going to fix this now. And then we kind of just throw everything at it and make it more complicated than it needs to be, because we want to fix it now instead of being in the uncomfortable experience of like, yeah, I'm here. I am aware that I have some shit going on, and it's just there, and being present with it, and I'm working on it. But I'm, you know, it's the thing.
Yeah. So in addition to, so we kind of talked about like the idea of, oh, you might choose the wrong mentor, or you might, you know, have this experience while working with your mentor. I'd love to also kind of bring in the pitfall of perhaps you start working with a mentor and they're great and they're actually super appropriate for you and you learn a lot, but then you outgrow working with them. And that's not really a pitfall, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. Or you graduate, I guess it is a term. And I've been in this position, Kat, I'm sure you've been in this position too, where it no longer feels as though it's appropriate or aligned for us to continue working with someone. And that process, I think it's largely the responsibility of the practitioner to be able to navigate that process and hold space for that happening gracefully and in an appropriate way. And that's something that I've done with various people who have graduated from working with me, whether it's because it was the end of their contract and we felt complete in our work together, or whether it's because it no longer felt aligned for us to continue our process. But I've had being on the receiving end of being in a working relationship with somebody. I unfortunately had a practitioner who I was working with kind of ghost on me, I guess. You know, they became really unavailable, and it was perhaps, I think it was fine because I was at that point where like, I don't necessarily need to keep working with this person, but it seemed as though we were kind of growing apart, and that just sort of happened very organically. And yet I felt a little bit bummed about like, wow, this person is really not showing up for me. And it's fine because I'm at a point where I don't need them in that same way. But that did feel like a little bit of a pitfall in terms of I didn't really receive the support that I thought would have been appropriate at that time.
And to be able to speak to that too, because a lot of times there is a power imbalance in a healing relationship. So there are times, I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday about a coaching arrangement that she has been in for quite a while, and kind of this feeling of like, I'm not really getting what I came for. I'm not really getting what I really wanted. I mean, and then having a feeling of, well, I don't feel comfortable saying that I'm not getting what I want because I got to be the good girl, or I got to like be nice, or you're not going to like me, or, you know, those things will come up. So
Yeah.
just to notice if those things are there for you, because a lot of times what will happen is you're not getting your needs met in some kind of way. The practitioner maybe isn't aware that you need your needs met in a certain kind of way, and you're not saying anything, so they continue to not meet your needs, and then eventually you become resentful and angry and you stop doing the work, which is maybe not helpful for the healing experience. So sometimes it is really going, hey, which is hard, it's challenging to say, I need more, or I need different, or I need something. I need, maybe it's, I don't know what I need, but there's something that I need in this experience. Can you help me figure it out?
Mm-hmm.
And if you say that to hopefully most practitioners and coaches and so on, they will be able to be like, okay, let's figure it out. What is it? You know, sometimes they might not be great at that, but hopefully they will be good at that.
And at least, yeah, be able to enter into the conversation, you know. And so that was something with this example I just gave. That was a few years ago. That wasn't super recently. And it was, I felt okay with how it kind of drifted off because I felt secure in what I was offering to myself for support at the time. But I think that if it had been earlier in my process, then I probably wouldn't have been able to, I wouldn't have felt comfortable asking for a different kind of support. And in that position, I didn't feel like I needed to, so I let it go. In a more recent example, I was working with a mentor, and at the beginning, we went through some different, it felt like different stages of evolution in our mentor-mentee relationship. And unfortunately, it ended in kind of a, not necessarily an ugly way, but definitely it felt as though there was some deeply, some stuff that felt really heavy that I didn't feel since I was in the position of receiving mentorship. I didn't feel as though it was appropriate or welcome for me to call it out. And that was because partially of the particular boundary and the way of that this person was operating. And that was part of my problem in working with this person, because that's not my boundary. And so then I think we had, I tried asking, you know, for some things in a couple of different ways. We tried having more communication, and I think we did come to a place of resolution. But then, you know, something ended up happening where I think there was a misinterpretation, and I honestly have no idea what ended up happening, because this person actually did ghost on me. And that again was more recently. And I felt, again, like, well, it's not my responsibility as the receiver to, you know, to initiate like that, you know, that calling out. But I don't know, it still feels a little unresolved. It still feels weird, but I, you know, genuinely am in the perspective of, I know there was some kind of massive misunderstanding, because very clearly, like, there's something still happening in that realm. And sitting with, well, what is my responsibility as the paying client of this person, or as the former paying client of this person? And so a pitfall there, I think, can come from, you know, either not asking for our needs, like Kat was saying, or asking for our needs and then either like not receiving it, or not having the kind of interaction that we were hoping for or looking for, or essentially not getting our needs met. And then how do we move forward in a graceful way, knowing that, you know, and to be perfectly honest, in this particular example, I am pretty sure that I triggered the fuck out of this person, if I'm being really honest. Not from me doing anything wrong, but from me simply being who I am and being honest and being in that person's field in a space that they weren't ready to be in. And I think that's part of this Two is remembering that whenever we're stepping into working with a practitioner, yes, there is this kind of one-sided power dynamic, but also know that our process is we're in this two-way engagement with our clients, whether we like it or not, whether we're acknowledging it or not. So knowing that your process, if you're having an awakening experience or you're having a certain flavor of energy, it has an effect. It is resonating in some way with your practitioner. And it's really foolish to pretend otherwise. And I think this is where, again, it's not so much the responsibility of the client. I mean, yes, it's great to advocate for our needs, but in that respect, just having open communication and having that understanding and relationship and being really clear about finding a practitioner that you can have those kinds of conversations with, I think it becomes really, really important. The more that you evolve in your process, the more that pitfall can be avoided by, again, like Kat was saying, even if you don't know what you need, saying, I need something, can we figure it out?
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many examples of that not going well.
Yeah. And, hopefully your practitioner will be able to hold space for you. I know years ago, I had someone who came to me and we were signed up to do a program of sessions. And at some point, the process that we were going through actually ended up with her needing to break the sessions and to leave because the healing that what occurred in the process was her actually like being able to say no to me and being able to stand up and being able to advocate for her needs and being able to, ask for what she needed. And it was a huge, huge, huge process. It was a huge awakening just to be able to say no to someone that she admired, respected, and wanted to love her. And, and within that, I've kept in touch over the years. And she was like, that was one of those most powerful healings that I've ever received. And, I was so happy to give her that. Right. And, at times a practitioner might not be able to see that higher, awareness of what's really going on in that moment. But, usually down the road we go, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. That was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that?
I think we're going in the same direction, shifting gears to our last facet here.
Yeah, I do. But like, I just want to also mention, like, one of the pitfalls that we have in doing this is that we don't do the work, where the practitioner gives us journaling homework, gives us practices to do, gives us things to do in our life. We go into a session and we talk to our higher self, basically, and we talk to our bodies and we talk to our inner child, and we're like, okay, this is what I need. I need A, B, C. And, and a lot of times when I come out of sessions with clients, in my notes, I'm giving them, okay, this is what you are telling me. The fullness of you is telling you that you need these 3 things or whatever, this one thing that you need to do. And sometimes people just don't fucking do it. And they don't do it, and they don't do it, and they don't do it. And they're like, well, yeah, I'm still having these issues and problems. I'm still kind of stuck. And it's like, well, did you go do the thing that you said you were going to do? Did you go paint the painting? Did you go into nature? Did you make the phone call? Did you, put the thing out? Did you do the thing? And they're like, no, I didn't do the thing. Did you do the practice? No, I didn't do the practice. Did you do the practice? No, I didn't do the practice. Do the practice, do the homework, do the journaling. It's not easy. It's not meant to be easy, but it's worth it. So don't fall into the pitfall of thinking you're going to show up, somebody's going to do something to you, heal you, and you're not going to have to do any work. That's
right. Oh yeah, that's a super, super important one. If we think like, oh, the work happens in the session. Mm-mm. And actually, I'd like to dispel that illusion right now. Speaking of dispelling things, the work doesn't happen in the session. The session is like the checkpoint. So imagine, you go to, say, for example, if you go to a gym to meet with a trainer once a week and you're trying to get fit. And it's like, okay, well, I know I'm going to work out with my trainer. And so, okay, you do the exercises with your trainer, and then the trainer is like, so this is your practice, like do these things, and you're going to go to the gym, another 3 or 4 days a week and do all these things. And you don't do that. And then next time you show up to work with your trainer, you're not any stronger. You're not any fitter. You're probably sore because you haven't worked out since the week before, and then you're expecting to have results and have the kind of experience that you want without actually putting in the work. And that's, we would look at that and say, well, of course that's not going to work. Of course that's not going to happen. So then, how would that be any different with your spiritual practice? So the work happens between sessions. The work happens in the practices.
Yay. All right. Yay. So let's shift to our practitioners and what are some of the pitfalls that we find in our practice? Probably there's so many of them. I definitely will miss quite a few, I'm sure. But let's talk about some of the stuff that goes down.
Great. Well, I would say not doing your practices also applies in this realm.
Totally.
Practitioner. Yeah. Are you actually taking care of and maintaining your body and your energy field and your space? And are you clearing the room every time a client leaves? Yep. Are you taking care of yourself? I would say that's probably like point number one. And again, that goes back to what we were talking about in terms of pitfalls of your personal practice. It's extra important when you're in the position of offering care and mentorship and healing work to other people that you maintain your body and your energy field. No excuses.
I cannot tell you how many practitioners I have worked with that have burnt themselves out completely, been unable to continue working because they weren't doing clearing practices. They weren't doing them properly. They weren't doing them enough. They weren't doing them well. They weren't taking care of their bodies. They weren't taking care of their spiritual self. They weren't taking care of themselves. And it can destroy your practice. Absolutely destroy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like point number one. And then, looking at, okay, well, as soon as we do start inviting clients into our work, whether that's in healing or mentorship or whatever, of course, what's happening in our energy fields in our bodies does affect them. Again, remember that whole energetic resonance thing. And I think, another pitfall is, are we inviting the appropriate people into our practice? Or are we saying yes to people who aren't a great fit?
Yeah, that one's hard because we're like, oh, I don't want to miss out on the money.
Or I can help them.
I can help this person. So we did the session on how to choose your clients. So go back. This was just not long ago. So go back and visit that episode of how to choose your clients. And this has tons of stuff about that. So you can get super clear on that.
Right. Yeah. So if you're inviting people into your practice who might not be aligned for your work or for your own personal energy or what you're actually interested in helping people with, or for whatever reason, they're not a great fit, that's a pitfall. And then I would say another pitfall is, how do we gracefully exit these people out of our practice? Or do we just continue to suck it up and then get resentful of having to show up and work with these people every day? Mm-hmm. That's both of those can be pitfalls. Or are we subconsciously sabotage the relationship with our clients and end up blowing things up and they fall into pieces, right? And then our client leaves upset and triggered, and we are all upset and triggered, and maybe we traumatize them, maybe we cause more harm than good. This is, again, a very legitimate, we're in a position of responsibility. And if we aren't careful in being in integrity, again, like we talked about last episode, being in integrity with our practice, we might inadvertently do more harm than good.
Right. Goodness, I had one and my brain just went sideways and blank. It's like 8:30 at night here, so I think I'm just like, I just completely lost my mind. Go ahead, Michelle.
You're doing great. Well, you want to talk about your one of your recent experiences, because you had a pretty big pitfall come up with a client not that long ago.
Yeah, I had a really big pitfall come up with a client who signed on to do some deep work with me, and I learned so much from this experience of having someone, back out of a contract for a very strange reason. And to, you know, come to some real deeper realizations around, number one, my onboarding process of who I'm inviting in, how I'm doing it, what the process is I'm taking people through. So often if you get business coaching, they're like, you get them on the consult and you just sell them the thing, and I don't think that's the way that I am preferring to do this. I'm like, let's ease into this. If I'm going to be in your life, you're going to be in my life, affecting, we're affecting each other for extended period of time, 6 months at least. Let's make sure this is a really good fit, and let's make sure this is going to work. And let's cross, all of the places where things could go wrong. Let's figure those out. So, we have to be aware that in a therapeutic relationship that we're in, it doesn't matter what kind of work that we're doing, that there's going to be transference and there's going to be counter transference at times. And so transference is seen where the client, the patient, the person is basically transferring this emotional charge and this viewpoint and this energy towards you, oftentimes based on whatever their significant issue or trauma thing that they're looking at or working on, that's coming up. And so then you become the representation of that. You become that, and so they can easily. It's like make you into one of their parents, that they abused them and hurt them and neglected them and shamed them and all of these things. And they can start to see you as that person. And the thing is that it's highly emotional. It's a highly emotional experience for that person. And so there will be people who have that experience and that can be, talked to, and that can understand what's going on and can go through a therapeutic process to be able to understand and come back to center. But so often, people will blame you because they've entered into this contract with you, and then all of a sudden all their shit's coming up, and they're they're having more pain sometimes. They come because they want to move through their things, and then you start helping them to feel, and holy shit, now they're really feeling for maybe the first time ever. They really are feeling their feelings. They're feeling their pain. They're feeling their physical body and what it actually feels like. They're feeling everything. And that can be incredibly challenging and really scary. And
it's not a logical thing, right?
No, it's totally subconscious, and it's happening at a level where, it's like, well, I need to blame somebody for this. And it allows that person to continue to live in a victim cycle, to continue to be in that space, to continue to have that as, this thing I tried isn't working, or this thing this person I trusted, I don't trust them, or whatever the story is, right? The story can be anything. And oftentimes the story is so odd because it's so untrue.
Right.
And so it's very hard to rationalize and talk towards something that is completely irrational and untrue, and not based on actual reality. And so that's something that can come up. And then just to speak to countertransference is where you start having an emotional response and reaction toward the client and the patient, and they're bringing up emotions in you, and you're feeling things, and you're now you're transferring your emotions back and forth on each other, which is kind of like this process where it's like, okay, how can this not work? How can the healing relationship not be effective? How can the ego, how can the patterns, the beliefs, how can the entities be in control of this experience so that this person doesn't get help? And that can be really triggering to you too as a practitioner. So it's important to be stepping back and taking space and sitting with yourself, maybe reaching out. I know going through this experience, I reached out to my mentors and was like, this is what's coming up. I've never actually had this actual to this level experience happen in my practice. And all the years that I've been practicing, I've never had this experience. So it was very helpful for me to have my mentors. I reached out to Michelle and was like, what do you think about this situation? But to have the reflection and to have some process that I could be going through, that I could receive mentorship, that I could grow, that I could learn. I learned so much from this experience. I completely changed a lot of things about my business aspect of my process of taking people into my 6-month work. And, I just up leveled, right? I was like, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to up level my therapeutic approach to what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Hearing what you've gotten out of that. I know that was, a few months ago. It was recent, but not, not immediately recent. But knowing that while we're in it, there's the transference, countertransference, projection, all these ways of demonizing or finding fault, and it can be really easy to take it personally. It can be really easy when we're in the role of the practitioner saying like, wait, you said you wanted to work on this and here you are. Don't you see that you're exhibiting this exact pattern that you said you wanted to work on? And, we can look at it, and again, it's not a logical thing. It's totally subconscious. It's a means of psychological protection. And again, these, the energies at play, the karma at play, there's so much there. And so the best thing that we can really do in that is, again, kind of come back to our integrity of what is the highest possible outcome for myself? What is the highest possible outcome for this person? What is the highest possible outcome of this situation? And how can I hold that? And how can I take a stand for that? And really, as gracefully as possible, navigate the stuff that comes up when we're working with clients. And I've been in positions too of having stuff come up, of having, again, that aspect of transference and that aspect of, I think, when was it? It was a couple of years ago. I had a client who was, it was in my business, was working with me in a mentorship capacity and in a VIP mentorship capacity. So she was, she had signed a contract saying that, she wanted to do this work with me, and that this is what we were going to do together, and this is how it was going to look and how much it was going to cost. And we ended up, we completed about 4 months of work together, and something came up that, again, that aspect of transference caused her to see me as a threat to her process, even though it was through our work together that she was working through this, and it was coming up, and I was giving her tools and practices, and she had said repeatedly how much she loved and valued our work together. But all of a sudden, this one little thing put her in a fear space, and all of a sudden I was dangerous. I was the threat. And it was a process of about a couple of weeks that we were moving through that. We were trying to come into, and she wanted out. She wanted straight up out of the working agreement. Now, again, I had, her signature and her commitment that she was invested in this process, and I was holding her accountable. I was trying to hold her accountable to not only the financial investment, which was significant, but also what she had said for herself that she wanted and the work that she wanted to do. And this is one of the big things, like what Kat was talking about. This person showed up wanting to do some really deep work. And the same with my client, wanting to do some really deep work and heal some deep trauma. And then as soon as shit got real, as soon as it's like the make or break time of, okay, are you sure you want to heal this? And I know we've talked about this a lot before, that whole, are you sure? Are you sure? Here, I'm going to give it to you bigger. I'm going to give it to you again. I'm going to give it to you in a different language. Like, that's where, again, when we have that commitment to our process, we're able to continue to wade through it no matter how uncomfortable it is. And some people choose not to. And sometimes those people are our clients, and sometimes they're going to say no, and they're going to kick and scream and make us out to be the bad guy because they're not willing to do the work. And unfortunately, that does happen. And the best thing that we can do in that place, and what I ended up doing with that client, because, you know, she ended up like straight up coming out and threatening me, essentially. And at that point, it was absolutely not safe for me to stay in any kind of working relationship with her. I will never work with this person again. And there are, you know, so many things that I needed to come to terms with in order to release her from her contract, to say goodbye to her last, you know, significant amount of money that I had coming in, that she had signed a thing saying was coming my way, and excuse her from my work, because it was no longer safe for her. It was no longer safe for me. And I did a lot of releasing. I did a lot of prayers for compassion and for understanding and for grace for this person. And I genuinely wish her well. It was very hard to be in the midst of that circumstance. Again, I called my mentors. I called Kat, and I was like, well, here's what's going on. What do you make of it? And it can be hard to be in that position. But again, our highest integrity is first to ourselves and to spirit, and also to our clients, and to the highest possible outcome, and not taking it personally when the shit hits the fan, because it's not a matter of if things will go wrong. It's a matter of when, and how much grace and allowing and compassion and perspective can we have when they do.
Yeah, really. So true. And, you know, within that, you dropped a couple of little things, but one piece that, you know, I've upgraded is the contract, and the awareness of, this is what you get. This is what's available for you. This is what's not. This is what the requirements are. This is what the money is. This is what the system is that you're working in. This is what might come up. This is your homework stuff. This is your portal. This is how it works. And being really clear about those things. This is a pitfall that a lot of practitioners get into, because we don't like admin, and we don't like things, and we don't like forms, and we don't like all the bullshit. We just want to do the work, right? But it's like, do you have a really good intake form? So you're finding out a lot of stuff about your person, you know, on all levels of being. Do you have a good contract so that they know what they're getting into when they sign up, that their shit will come up, and they might want to run away, and the commitment is to not run away. They might still run away. So just know that, you know. And you know, there will be times when someone signs up for a thing, and then the next day they freak the fuck out and are like, I have to have a refund, and they need my money back, and and you know, sometimes it's like being with yourself and being like, okay, is this because I really need to talk to this person and help them get through this process? And sometimes it's, okay, I'm just like, I need to let this person have the experience they're having, which is like running away, and let it be, because it's going to be too much work to try to hold on to someone who's freaking out sometimes. You know, a lot of times I know now because healers, we're now in this healing, but there's coaching. So we're like both. And business coaches are coming from a business coaching background. They are dealing with business contracts, business deals, business stuff. And so they're like, well, you have to have the contract, and the contract is this, and that's it. And you get their money, and that's it. And sometimes that's in integrity, and sometimes it's not. And it's up to you to be searching what's in integrity for you, and what's in alignment for your business. And
and for how you want to spend your time and energy, because, you know, with this particular person, like, I could have taken her to small claims court.
Yeah,
I'm not doing that. No, like, that's, you know, even though, again, I had it in writing, I had it in multiple forms that this was the deal. And, but again, it would have felt like it would have been additionally damaging to the relation. Like, the relationship was not good. The practitioner relationship was not going to be salvaged at that point. It was like, okay, so how can I just, you know, cut everything loose and have no additional harm reduction?
And, you know, it's for me, it's like, well, do I want like these chords with this situation and this experience? Do I want Do I want like some very strong negative energy pointed toward me? Like, is that something I want to spend my time like deflecting? No, like I want everything to be clear. And if someone's moving out of my care, I want them to feel empowered, and I want them to feel safe enough through the experience that maybe they will at some point do the deeper work that they came to do with someone else, whoever that is. I don't care who it is. I want that person first and foremost to be in peace and joy and harmony and wholeness, and whatever it takes to get there in some regards. And sometimes as practitioners, that sucks. You know, it sucks not to be like, oh, well, I don't need to sell anything this month because I have this money coming in, and then be like, holy fuck, I do not have that money coming in. Okay, and turn the car, we're going the other direction. Okay, so sometimes that stinks, and it happens. So not that often. It's not a thing that happens that often. Hopefully, if it is happening often, something to look at. But every once in a while, it goes down. And it's important to know that it can occur, and not to be knocked off center too much by it, because we can really internalize that, and we can take it to mean I'm a bad practitioner, or I shouldn't be doing this, or I charge too much, or whatever our story is, right? We all have our own story. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's, there's certainly more things. I know this is another long episode we got going here. But again, if I could invite back to some of these core pieces, knowing that our biggest way to avoid, again, it's not about not having things go wrong. It's about, well, how do we avoid as many as possible? And then when things go wrong, how do we navigate them with as much ease and grace as possible? And the best ways to avoid pitfalls are being in integrity, right? With yourself, with your personal practice, with understanding, receiving appropriate support to give context, give education, give support for the process and the integration, and to maintain your energy body. If you have the skills and techniques already, and you may or you may not, you might be brand new to this. And if you are, then please go back and tune into other previous episodes of ours, because we have a lot of tools and practices. And if you do know how to maintain your energy body, then actually maintain your energy body. Really take care of yourself. That's one of the best things that you can possibly do. And know, again, whenever you find yourself in a situation that's requiring some management, and it seems as though you're in one of these big pitfalls we've been talking about, then just remember that you have everything you need. You are resourced. You do have support. You do have resources that you can reach out to. If nothing else, you can send us an email, and know that you're okay. You're going to be okay. And just dial it back, take a step back, sit with your own energy, do your practices, take care of yourself, and then step back into it from that empowered place, because you're going to be fine. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we should wrap this up.
Right. Clearly, we've got a lot to say about this.
We have so much to say about this. But if you do want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us via Facebook or through our website, shamansistersessions.com. You can find all of our information everywhere there. And we'd love to hear from you. And then if you are needing more support in energy practices, in taking care of yourself, I know, Michelle, you have some amazing trainings coming up.
Yeah, I've got, I Am Lightworker is a 4-day intensive healership training in October. It's live. It's outside of Portland. And early bird pricing goes through August 1st. So go ahead and get your application in as soon as possible. You can find that on my website, joyofenergy.com, and it's under healer training. So if you want to submit an application for that and grab your early bird spot, then I recommend doing that right away. And then other than that, I do have one-on-one mentorship with me available also as an option.
Amazing. So I am hosting a webinar, the Empath Misconception, because I have a new empath course coming up soon. So the webinar is going to play a couple times. If you're interested in that, you can find it on Eventbrite and get yourself signed up. Just search Katherine Bird on there. And otherwise, 5 Elements for Empaths is going to be starting at the end of July, I believe. And it's going to be an 8-week online course with some group coaching. There's some opportunity to do some individual one-on-one sessions with me within that container. And if you mention that you're coming from Shaman Sister Sessions and you saw it here and you got all the way to here, then you will receive a bonus of another course, Energetic Mastery course, which you can start working on upgrading your energy and your practice right away.
Beautiful. And that's super powerful stuff. So go ahead and follow us on our YouTube channel, Shaman Sister Sessions. You can find all our past episodes on YouTube and on iTunes and Stitcher. And let us know how this is going for you. We'd love to hear from you. And see you next time.